For anyone new here, I normally start about 3 minutes past the hour, but I do two different tracks. The A track is where I actually talk about the technology and the tools and new things that you may be interested in knowing, but track B is the business impact of AI in a small business, and I focus normally on the smaller businesses. And so today, what I want to talk about is shadow AI. And so that will all be explained if you're not familiar with that term. And just a quick heads up, are you seeing screen? I hope so. Yeah, great. Thanks, Richard. And I will try to monitor the chat if anyone wants to add anything while we're in progress. If I could have you please mute during this. I do record them, and normally within 24 hours I have it on a YouTube channel. And so we will go from there. See a few more people come on. That's two after. I will get going. And so, welcome to anybody who may be new to this or anybody who's joined previous sessions. This is what I call my Tuesday Pulse AI. I'm Chuck Boyce with Cibi Creative, and I focus on helping small businesses get ready for doing larger scale process automation with AI. Talk about, as I mentioned, two different tracks. One track is the A track, which talks about tools. Today is the B track, which is talking about the impact on businesses. So before I get into this framework, I want to start with something most small business owners probably didn't decide to do is they didn't adopt AI. AI adopted them. And this covers what is called shadow AI. And shadow AI is where AI enters your business without you really approving it. What exposure looks like right now, 5 things that you can do this week to create a defensible baseline. And again, this is not about the tools, it's not a demo, it's about the operational reality. And so the operational reality is that your team is probably using AI you didn't approve and what that means for your business. So 20% of all data breaches right now are really involving shadow AI. And what that means is that somebody in your business is probably using a private version of ChatGPT or Claude, and they are copying and pasting, trying to get a proposal out or a presentation. And so they'll take proprietary data, whether it's internal processes, customer data, financial information, or something like that, and thinking that they're going to create a better proposal. So they're doing it at home using their personal copy of ChatGPT or Cloud or Gemini, and that data gets used for training purposes, and a client or your business may suddenly have exposure that you didn't expect. And that is just because your employees are saying, I just want to do a better job. We don't have any AI policy rules. I'm going to use ChatGPT and come up with this presentation. And so the real numbers are the average additional cost when shadow AI is present beyond the cost of the tools is legal costs, remediation, legal costs, your reputation, your client exposure can get really expensive. There's a lot of privacy policies, rules, laws that have hefty fines, and enterprises can absorb some of these costs, but a small business, a single fine may wipe you out. And so just be aware that this is expensive exposure if you're not aware of it and trying to figure it out. And so 50%, 56% of employees are using AI right now. And again, it could be just ChatGPT or Claude, and they think it's innocently enough, but they're using it whether you approve it or not. And if you don't have AI policies in place to say what tools can be used for what purpose, and most of all, you want to have a policy that says use only our corporate version, don't use your privacy. Because again, most owners didn't decide to adopt AI, it just shows up. They found a tool that saved them an hour worth of work, or a vendor updated their software. And this is where it gets really scary, because both Google with Workspace, and Microsoft with Office 365 just added AI to your standard tools. And so suddenly, if you don't have this in place, you have AI, whether it's somebody taking notes with a meeting recorder or looking at your calendar to make an appointment. It's exposure without a plan. There's no risk assessment, no policy review, no decisions, just a series of individuals who think they're doing a better job faster, but you're exposing your business and your clients to AI without being aware. So it comes in three forms, and you probably have them all, whether you realize it or not. Number one is the obvious one, the unapproved tools. And so somebody using ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini at home with a personal copy. So there's no policy, no approval, but they can copy and paste your proprietary data into something to help them do their job better, but there's no rules in place, there's no guidelines. The second category is the approved tools like Google Workplace or Microsoft Office 365 or something like that, where they just introduce AI features to the tools, but they don't really tell you, and you don't have the ability to apply policy to prevent data exposure. They think they're helping you, we're giving you all these AI functionality, but they don't say, by the way, have you locked down your data and show what AI can do? Because if you have an open policy and suddenly within Google Workspace, it can read your drive and you have a company drive that has proprietary data or client data, that suddenly could be possibly exposed. And again, that goes further into category three, the AI inside approved software that you didn't get that. And that one is things like Copilot, Salesforce Einstein, Grammarly Business. They're all tools that are approved, but when they added additional AI features, was your business policy in place to protect your data? Most likely not. The AI features just showed up and they're being used. So the tool appears, here's how it happens. Discovery comes from outside because the tool appears, there's no inaction, there's no policies in place, the employees start using it, the data gets exposed, and suddenly a client finds that they're using ChatGPT and they do some research and their business name pops up and they're like, wow, where did this come from? And they can trace it back to your business, and suddenly you have a legal risk potential. And so by the time step 5 arrives, it doesn't matter whether documentation exists, because in most cases it doesn't. But if you have not documented what tools use AI, what policies are in place, if none of that is documented, tracked, and logged, you have data exposure, because the courts have shown that you can't say it was the AI that hallucinated or made the problem or took our data. It was, no, an employee in your organization was most likely responsible, and you didn't have policy in place to prevent that exposure. So you or the employee is legally responsible or liable for that breach. Scary stuff, but it is happening more and more. And so this is really just a systems problem. The technology works, it works as it was supposed to. Hallucinations are actually a feature of AI. I mean, they're supposed to create things from the data that they've been trained on. So shadow AI doesn't create organizational problems. It exposes problems that already exist. And so again, there's two different, what I call my 5 blind spots. And number one is the process illusion. If your workflow isn't documented and consistent, you can't govern what AI is doing with the data, what data it's exposed to, and what rules it's using to do whatever you think AI is doing. And so if your processes are not documented consistently, AI will fill in the gaps and it will make things up if it's not fully documented. And so, number one, the processes, you really do have to start looking at them, documenting, and how AI is going to be used within those processes. And the other one is the ownership gap. The ownership gap consists because nobody is saying that we have this AI person who is responsible for making sure what tools we use, what laws or policies are applied to that, and what data is being exposed. Errors aren't being caught because somebody may have written a AI workflow 6 months ago, and it was based on your company rules at that time, your pricing, your policy. And if those have not been updated to reflect the current way you're doing business, AI can't understand how you do it, but somebody has to be responsible for making sure that anything AI touches follows however your business has adapted. And so somebody has to make sure what's going in, what's coming out, where the tools are, how they're visible, who has exposure, and what can be used. And so ownership is a huge thing. Own the process, own the AI. So what happens when your vendor claims your data? Now, here's another interesting one. It's a governance failure because when you start using an AI tool, whether you realize it or not, one of the big things that happens is that by default, these vendors use your data unless you explicitly say, don't use for training purposes, don't make our product better, don't do anything with our data. And also, if you start using it in regulated industries like HIPAA or FARPA or any of the other things that you need business access authorizations and things like that, this vendor becomes a partner and they have to have some way that you can control how they're going to use their data, how you can access it, how long they can keep it, and should you decide to leave, can they delete it? Can they prove that you actually own the data and they don't? Again, most AI businesses hide that within their super long forms of legal questions, or you sign a form and most people scroll through 20 things and says, I okay this, but do you have ownership of your data? Can you they tell you what it's used for, where it's stored? Is it stored in the United States? Is it stored in Europe? Your data is being used, it is being stored, and do you have full ownership? That is an answer that most AI vendors are not able to give you. So, 3 compliance realities. HIPAA, there's a great one. Pasting protected health data, client data, any PIIs type of stuff into Claude, ChatGPT, Copilot. The moment it's submitted, it could be a violation. It's not necessarily misused, but none of those have your business associate agreement. And that top penalty, up to $2 million per violation. A small business cannot absorb that. A bigger company may. Then you also have state privacy laws. The state privacy laws are there to protect the consumer. And so it does not matter where you are basing your business. You could be in Delaware or South Carolina, where I am, but if your client is in California, you have to comply with California state privacy laws. And so if any of that client data gets exposed, you are liable. In American Honda, there's a great thing, a $400 or $632,000 fine last year because inadvertent client data against California privacy laws. Employment decisions is another big one. If you are using a tool to not only do check employer employment decisions such as hiring. You could have racial bias or physical bias or state bias or age bias built in and you don't know. And so, again, California laws, New York City laws, there's Colorado, Utah, a lot of states are now having anything that has to do with employment, in lending, in education. They're protecting the consumer. And if you violate that state's law, ignorance of the tool is not a defense. You can't say it was the AI who did it. You have to understand that client was in a different state that has privacy laws, and your employee inadvertently exposed that. Your company is liable, not the AI vendor, not the client. It's you who offered that as a service. Very concerning. So, courts don't ask whether you had a policy. It's whether you followed it, whether you enforced it, whether you trained people on it, and then document all of those. So you could have an AI policy sitting in a folder, but if you didn't tell your employees, here are the tools that you can use, here is the data that you can use with it, and here is the output that needs to be checked on before it goes out. So you could have the policy, but if they're not trained on it, if they're not enforcing it, if you're not documenting and logging, the courts don't matter. Again, AI did it is not an excuse. It is the company, the employee, the owner who said that or allowed it. And so you need to have policies in place, you need to train your force on it, and you need to enforce it with the documentation and logging. So for any small business, when you talk, either you have a business or you're dealing with clients and you're offering AI services, here's the 4 questions that you need to ask. So they're not trick questions or anything like that. Do you know every AI tool? And this could be an AI functionality in workplace or office. It could be a plugin for your browsers that has AI. It could be a Grammarly, anything like that. But you need to understand where AI is and did you approve it? And the employees, if they're not trained on it and they're not told, they don't know. They don't care. They're just trying to do their job better. And AI helps. So, do you have a written policy specifying what data can, more specifically, what cannot go into those? Do you say you can't put client information, you can't put pricing, you can't put our internal policies or procedures? So you have to document what they cannot put in, which is more important than what they can. And then, do you have anyone on your team that is your AI go-to person that can be training people on policy, keeping them up to date within the last 90 days? Biggest one right now that no one seems to be having is, do you have a vendor agreement review process? If somebody like a new tool says, hey, we have this AI functionality, now you can use AI within our process. Do you have the vendor agreements? If you're doing HIPAA, if you're doing any compliance issues, do you have a business agreement with them that says they can use your data and how long they're storing it? There's a lot of questions that there are no answers right now, but you have to start by putting these into place. It's not a compliance, it's just a documentation process. So it's rarely a technology problem, it's always a business problem. So start with simple policies, documenting what you have, who owns it, what can be used, and dealing with vendor process reviews, vendor review process. So here's where costs don't show up in the license fee, because if you say, oh, great, we have this new tool that's $49 a month, this is great, we can have unlimited AI use. But if you start using things like API costs or token costs, or using AI by usage, metered costs, which is becoming more and more of how people are starting to price, because AI to date has been extremely cheap. It's all been subsidized. It's been venture capitalists are giving OpenAI and Anthropic and other vendors tons of money to support giving you AI cheap. But if you've used Claude recently, you've probably run into you've used your AI token usage for the last 3 hours, and so you have to wait another hour to use it, or you may have run into your monthly limit or something like that. But they're now starting to meter how much you use it. The data retention and liability, if you don't know where your data is being stored. If you have a client in Europe and your data centers in the United States, are they following your European conventions of data security and support? You have to know where the data is being stored, how long it's being stored, how easy it is to have them delete it or to give you control over that data. Again, most don't ask that, they don't tell you, but the courts will ask you, can you produce a record, where it's been stored, how long, how do you access it? And remediation costs, if it does get into the courts, it's just getting harder to protect without documentation, and it's getting more expensive. And so these are new business problems. Again, they're not technology problems, they're business problems of how you're tracking this, where the costs are coming in, and how expensive it could be to deal with the courts. So here's part nobody wants to do, the boring, stupid, time-consuming document what you're doing. The workflow around the tool is that creates your accountability. And so ask these 5 questions. It's never the tool, it's the workflow. So who can use this tool? What data can go in? Who reviews the output before it leaves? What happens if the output's wrong? What is a hallucination? Is it really an hallucination? Is it current? Did it reference a document that's 5 years old with an old policy or pricing? And who owns it? Where is that data being stored? If you can't answer those questions, start finding a way to document and do it. Nobody is doing it well, but you have to start somewhere. And so you need those governance policies in place to protect yourself from the potential legal aspect. So, inventory. First of all, find out what is in use. Go to your team directly. Check if they're using software. Are they using a personal version or are they using a business version? If you use Google Workplace versus standalone your Gmail account, the corporate version of Workplace has a lot of data controls. The personal version does not. Same with Microsoft. You could have a copy of Word, Excel that has AI built in, but if it's not the Open 365 type Office 365 with potential corporate laws or rules applied to them, somebody may be doing it. Your Grammarly business versus Grammarly standalone. Each one has their own, and again, by default, they're using your data. They want to improve their product. If you don't manually go in and check your settings to say, do not use my data for training, it may be going out there. And so you'll find very surprising things of what tools are actually there. Again, even browser plugins. Find out what they are using it and control what they can. Ask them if it's something that you need to bring into your business and get a corporate policy or a corporate version of it. If it really helps them, bring it in. Ask them what they're using it for. Assign ownership. Every tool that touches it, one person needs to be your AI go-to, and it could be the AI go-to in a certain tool, but who is reviewing all of those prompts, the context files, the data that it has access to, the review of what is coming out? Is it accurate? Are we giving client old data? Somebody has to own the AI tool. Define what you can go in, mostly what can't go in. So say that you can't use client data, you can't use PII, you can't use certain things. Name prohibitions and enforce it with documentation and train your staff on what they can't use. Not what they can, but that's also a good thing too. But give them policies, give them access to the policies and review them. Go through your vendor agreements. Any AI tool that you're paying a subscription to has data policies buried somewhere in there. Have somebody find those clauses, flag it for legal review, see if you can modify the agreement. If you have to leave vendors because they're not giving you control of your data, leave them, find somebody who will, because they will work with you. But by default, they want to use your data. They want to train. They want to find out ways to make their product better. And if they're using your data, they're happy to do that. But if you don't say, don't do it, there's nothing stopping them. By default, they will use it. And then document it. Date it, sign it. Regulators don't require perfect, but they require reasonable attempts to document it. And so the more you can document, the more protected you're going to be. Pretty easy. This is something you can do within a week. Don't do one big project. Do it step by step, but start the process. What do we have? What can it access? What can't go in? Who gets the data? Who owns it? And create your workflows. So build your governance around the process, not the tool. Tools change, tools get updated, but your processes may change slightly. But in general, if you build governance around your process, document your process, what data it can get. It doesn't matter which tool. Tools can be plugged in. You can switch pretty easily. But the workflow itself is how the data is accessed, how it affects your business, and what controls you have around it. And so, again, it's your policy around the process, not necessarily the tool. AI is going to get there. It's going to be introduced in more and more tools, but be aware and have governance over it. And so I have a few different tools that you can use. The check.cbcreative.com is a little 5-minute or less, 3 minutes to just go through checks on the 5 blind spots, where you may be exposed and how you can start getting more ready. If you actually have a process that you're thinking of using AI to improve, you can use the assessment. It's a little bit longer, about a 20-minute check that asks you 4 questions about the process and then all the background around it. Just it gives you a better view of how ready you are to bring AI deeper into your business. And then, as I mentioned, I took a break last week, but every week, Tuesday Pulse sessions are recorded. They're on YouTube afterwards. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. Otherwise, go to the website, find out what tools how I can help you. Because I love to educate. I love to help people give direction. And so if you need more help on being ready to find these blind spots, more than happy to help you out. And so with that, I will stop the recording.